Everybody, welcome to another episode of Viall Files. I'm just trying to
You're very cool.
bring a little spice to my intros.
Guess so.
How's everyone doing? That's you, listeners. I'm asking. I hope everyone's in their car on their podcast or their headphones. Be like, I'm great, Nick. Another great episode for you. I'm equally excited about this one. Last week we had a fun episode with our friend Sylvie talking about attachment styles. We actually talk a little bit about that again today with our guest Liz Plank. Liz is great. She has a new book out called For the Love of Men. I love this because, I mean, I say this at the end of our episode. You know, this is really why I started this podcast, and it's kind of bringing up just kind of alternative ways of thinking. You know, so much of what we do or how we do things has been because we've just always done it a certain way over the history of our time, and understanding all these different things is fascinating, and talking about, we're in interesting times, trying to be progressive as possible, trying to have equality amongst all different types of people and you know, traditional minorities, but then understanding how it affects the counterbalance of men and how we interact with things. So talk a lot about masculinity, where that comes from. Liz has a lot of interesting insights. She's studied a lot about it, done a lot of research, and we've gotten into that. So it's a lot of fun. I think you will enjoy it.
Yeah, she's a badass for sure.
It's really great.
You know, it's funny. I was looking online that you commented. So the thing with Raven and Rachel, I thought was interesting.
They seem to be in a big fight.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I saw something about Colton asked if she doesn't.
If she just doesn't like everyone.
And I wrote, I'm pretty sure she likes me. Well, before I give my 2 cents on that, I do want to talk to you about my new favorite game, Hunt a Killer.
Yes, Hunt a Killer. My gosh, it's so fun.
I like to use my deductive reasoning and clues.
We all like to be little detectives.
And like, this is a game. It's a great game night game. It's also something you can do by yourself.
Yeah.
If you want.
And a great gift for that friend that you have that loves listening to those murder podcasts.
Murder myth podcast.
Or watching Forensic Files.
It's the murder mystery box that immerses you in an ongoing detective experience.
Yeah, we have the box right here.
It's the fastest growing murder mystery subscription game that puts you in the mind of a detective.
Yeah.
Every delivery, you'll shift through elaborate case files and evidence. So basically, if you are a fan of any type of true crime CSI show, you like figuring things out, if you think to yourself, I could do this too, now you can see if you actually have what it takes.
Yeah, they'll send you 1 box per month, and all the boxes lead up to one case, so you kind of have to keep working on it to figure out the whole thing.
It's very involved. This is not some like couple notes.
No.
Like, this is not like a game of Clue, people.
No, it's awesome. And like I said, it's a great gift.
Great gift. You can have it for game night. You can do it for yourself. It's something like as a couple you could do, like an ongoing thing. You bring out a little bit. You spend 30, 20 minutes on it every night. You figure it out. Fucking get away from the mundaneness of your life, and you guys can like fight about something that doesn't even really matter, which is kind of great. You can debate it and have fun. It's a really novel idea, and it's really great. So how to get it? Well, right now, just for our listeners, you can go to huntakiller.com/VIALL for 20% off your first box. Hurry to take advantage of this offer and embrace your inner detective. That's huntakiller.com/VIALL for 20% off your first box. huntakiller.com/VIALL.
How are you liking your new Figs scrubs?
I love my new Fig scrubs. Very stylish scrubs.
Jogger pants.
They are like
they
jogger
look
pants.
so
They come in different
comfortable.
colors. They're very fashionable. I wear them and when people ask, I want, listen, it's kind of hot to be a doctor.
Very hot.
Women seem to enjoy the doctor fantasy. And so even at the just off chance that someone might think maybe I'm a doctor, I just don't answer the question. Are you a doctor? Maybe.
Yeah, but also nurses, and they all work so hard. People in the medical field, they're working so hard, and they're stuck with these scratchy, ugly scrubs. So why not treat yourself or treat someone in your life who works in the medical field with some very fabulous scrubs?
Yes, it absolutely makes a lot of sense for the people who are in that field, and you should get them and look stylish and great and be comfortable. It's made with amazing, comfortable fabric. Also, if you're not, you can still look good.
Plus, they give back. So every scrub you buy, they give scrubs to healthcare providers in need around the world. So you can't go wrong.
Check them out. Whether you are one of the awesome humans that works in the healthcare, or just someone that wants to say thanks for these deserving folks, Figs is going to make that easy by providing you with 15% off your first purchase by using my code VIALL. Get ready to love your scrubs. Head to wearfigs.com, WEARFIGS.com, and enter my code VIALL at checkout.
So tell me what your opinion is.
I don't really have necessarily an opinion.
It seems like you do.
I don't really know what I remember last time I saw Rachel, she mentioned that there was.
You don't know what it is?
I don't know.
She didn't tell you?
No. I mean, why would she tell me?
I thought because you
so
were
I can
friends.
talk about it on my podcast?
No.
I really don't know. I find it interesting because remember when I had Rachel on this podcast?
Yes.
And I mentioned that Raven spent the first 30 minutes of a fantasy suite talking shit about Vanessa, and then Raven mentioned on my made a comment and became this kind of drama, and Raven and I had this little back and forth.
Right.
Remember that? And I was like, well,
that.
I don't know, it's the truth, Raven. I don't know what you want to talk about, but you're welcome to come on the podcast and talk about it.
Right.
I got on the phone with Rachel.
Yeah.
Because they were friends.
Right.
And I remember asking her opinion or what she thought. I'm like, I don't understand. Like, Raven's making it a big deal of, like, at the time, I remember thinking, no one's talking about that except for Raven.
Right.
And then she brought awareness to it kind of thing. And I just remember calling up Rachel, like, so what do you think? I mean, how do you think I should handle it? Would she come on if I, whatever. And it just became an issue. My point of only bringing that up is that they were clearly talking then. And that wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
So something happened.
Something recent.
And
but it kind of annoys me when people are like, Rachel doesn't like anyone. It's like people aren't allowed to have opinions.
Totally disagree with Colton.
Yeah.
I think it was kind of an unnecessary comment by Colton. I think Rachel's opinionated.
Yes,
I
which
think
is
that's
kind
great.
of refreshing.
I don't like this. Do I agree with everything Rachel says? No.
Yeah.
But this idea that like Rachel just hates everyone, but because she's not afraid to like speak up and not suck everyone's metaphorical dick in Bachelor Nation. Like, like I have a lot of my friends and I will stand up for them. I will disagree with them. I know sometimes people think I'm like, a homer for the franchise, but like I can be critical too. Rachel's opinionated and I love that about her.
Yeah.
What happened between the two of them? I don't know. I guess I don't really care. I do. Listen, I think Raven's very self-conscious about her brand. I think that was demonstrated by the fact that she chimed in there.
Yes.
I think Raven on my season was kind of the silent assassin. She was the one who was involved in all the drama, and she kind of even admitted
but
this
no
at
one
the time.
knew.
But no one knew, and she knew how to poke and play.
Yes.
She knew. Raven's very bright and very sharp, and she very much knew what was going on, and she would know how to start shit and like walk away. That was kind of the role that she played. I mean, that's fine too. Like all I'm saying is Raven's not some like innocent little saint and Bambi and just I'm just grateful to be here.
Never had an orgasm.
Never had an orgasm. Like, Raven's a savage, and that's fine. I quite like that about Raven.
Yeah, I think
thought
it's
that was
awesome.
cool. It made her interesting.
Exactly.
To me. So
but let people have opinions.
Whatever happened between Rachel and Raven, I'm saying probably played into some like conflict of interest of the hustle and bustle it is to be around in this world.
What a nightmare.
But I don't. I love Colton. I don't agree with him on this take.
Yeah.
I think that's a very fair thing to say. And maybe there's some loyalty between like his friendship with Tia and Raven, or
it's complicated.
It's complicated, but like to my knowledge, I don't think Colton knows Rachel at all. I think Rachel has been critical of Colton at times. So he's probably super sensitive about that, but whatever. I guess I don't really agree with Colton.
But besides Bachelor Drama, we have a fabulous episode that has nothing to do with The Bachelor.
But you should still tune in. It's really, if you liked last week's episode, you're going to love this one. It's just more interesting dialogue about the roles as men and women as we play in relationships, how we interact with each other, how we can try to better understand each other and hopefully have healthier relationships and not kind of give in to some of the social constraints that we so often do with each other. So I hope you'll enjoy it. Once again, as always, don't forget to rate us 5 stars. We're close to 10,000 reviews. We're not really getting any higher in how our podcast is rating, so your 5-star ratings are appreciated. But anyways, as always, thanks for tuning in. Always send your questions to asknick@castmedia.com for Monday's episodes. We love you guys. We couldn't be here without you. Thanks so much. I hope you enjoy this next episode.
Noom.
Well, honestly, shavings make a pile.
Yes.
Rochelle. better health with Noom. Good habits come over time.
Yeah. And it's just a great way to use technology to help better understand your body and what you're eating and kind of take control over everything. You just have to spend about 10 minutes a day on this app. This is what I do. Yeah.
We're on our phone all the time.
Yeah.
I get an update every Sunday of how much I'm on my phone.
Exactly.
And it's absurd how many hours. And if I just took a little bit of time, and if you, more importantly, just took a little bit more time to use that phone in a productive way by using Noom to get a better insight into your eating habits and how you can eat healthier, how you can have a, not necessarily a diet, right?
Well, I noticed that I was eating a lot of dense food. So that was red when I was putting them into my app, which means that I couldn't eat as much and it was higher calories. So I started changing up what I was eating and I saw a big change that way.
It's incredible. It's one of the biggest and most accurate food databases available that lets you track meal habits, visual portion sizes, and see calorie density at a glance. That is amazing. So what do you have to lose? Visit Noom.com/VIALL to start your trial today. That is Noom.com/VIALL. The last weight loss program you'll ever need. Liz.
Yes.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
So nice to have you.
I'm so excited.
It's always funny how things work out. Liz is here because she tweeted something.
Mm-hmm.
I liked it.
There we go.
And she wrote back, can I send you my book? And I said, why don't you come here on my podcast and then give it to me?
Oh, you're a hustler. I like
Yes.
that.
And then here we are.
I came all the way.
I thought Liz would be great. You have a book called For the Love of Men that is out.
Mm-hmm.
Is it doing well?
It is actually. I was told men are not going to buy this book and men don't buy books. Which is so offensive, I think. A lot of, I know. And they were like, you should write, the next generation of women are from Venus and men are from Mars. And I was like, this is the opposite of that point. I don't want to reinforce all these differences. I want people to be free from them. So I kept with my idea. This is an important life lesson. When you come up with something that is new, a lot of people are going to tell you that it can't be done, and pushing through that is really important. And
or they're going to tell you like it's already been
done. Totally. Yeah, other people have tried, and they were very, I don't know, some of the publishers were pretty patronizing. It was like, you're so cute, like you think men are gonna buy a book about masculinity. And in the end, based on my DMs and obviously the sales, we've seen that a lot of men have been buying the book.
You have a pretty diverse audience when it's not just women reading about men.
No.
Okay.
And I really wrote this to show that masculinity was the solution, not the problem. It's so often in these conversations around men that we've been having, right? We've been having so many good conversations around feminism and around women's equality and gender equality, but it's always like men as the problem, right? The framing is always very negative. And I think that we over-evaluate how much people change through shame. We think that men are going to be changing through being shamed, and I think that not only doesn't work, but can actually be counterintuitive.
That makes sense. So let's backtrack a little bit before. So how did you tell us a little bit about yourself before you even got into writing a book about masculinity and toxic masculinity and men and things like that? How did you get your start? And then what kind of prompted you to have this idea and have it become a passion of yours?
So I grew up in a very feminist household. There's a lot of trauma in my family, sexual assault, incest. And so I learned about very difficult things at a very young age. And I saw the way that it affected my mother and it's been a super impactful experience to just be firsthand experience of what it's like to really be a victim of sexual violence in our society. And so it was always something that I was aware of. I was also raised in a household with a lot of empathy. I'm very lucky. I was always interested in, I kind of never got, when you're 2 and you keep saying like, why, you just keep asking questions like why, and then you get to the end and the adult is just like, well, the world is unfair, like that's just the way that the world is. And I kind of never got over that phase of like, why are there people who don't have money and who are homeless? Why are there women who can't leave their houses? Why do LGBTQ people continue to face discrimination? I worked with people with disabilities in Montreal, and I was just always sort of interested in people who don't get a voice in our society. And so strangely enough, I wrote a book about men, which I think surprised a lot of people, as I've been a gender reporter and focusing on women for a long time, because women tend to have a lot less of a voice in our society. But as I started doing research around masculinity, I realized that a lot of the pain that was coming, a lot of the pain that men were causing to me and to the women around me was because they had been hurt first, right? So we are all affected by gender stereotypes that constrain us, and the quote unquote patriarchy, which I know is a scary term. Maybe we could call, I think some people don't love to hear that or believe that.
Men don't?
I think even women. Oh my God, even women.
Well,
and we can get into that. For
the people who don't know, like, what do you mean by
Yes.
patriarchy?
Patriarchy is basically a system that we all live in that was invented. It's not innate to our nature. It's, yes, exactly. And I go into evidence in the book. I love data and proving things. I love,
Crazy.
yeah, I love being right. And so
It's really hard when I'm always right and you're never wrong.
Yes, exactly. It's tough. So patriarchy is a system that basically that men rule over women, and it's rooted in capitalism, in the production of resources, and it started around the time that we shifted to an agricultural society where people basically became units of labor, right? So your children became workers, and if you had more children, more of them could work. Your wife became property, and right, marriage and owning her, and also as a unit of labor. And that system is bad for women because it constrains women to these roles that are more passive, that are where we have less control over our bodies, over our decisions. But it's also a system that's really constraining for men. So it's that system that says that men have to dominate with aggression, or that they have two emotions. They're either angry or not angry, right? They don't get the same latitude to fully express themselves because they're also boxed into these stereotypes as well. And so what I started to find is that masculinity was kind of like Fight Club. Like the first rule was that you weren't allowed to talk about it. Mm-hmm. And as a journalist, when someone doesn't want to talk about something, you just want to ask so many more questions. And so I would ask men really simple questions about what it meant to be a man. When did you know you were a man? Do you want us to do it right now?
Sure, it's fun. I like
quizzes. When did you know that you were a man, Nick?
I don't remember. I mean, I guess the simplest way I ask that question is from as long as I could remember, I don't know. There's not a moment, right? In terms of my parents were like, hey, you have a penis. So you're a man. I don't know. I was always a guy. I mean, thinking back, I have a lot of siblings. So there was a time where I was the only boy in my family. And I remember wanting a brother. I mean, there's that thought of I have sisters and I'm a boy. I don't know. But it wasn't I think I was very lucky with the parents I have. And I don't know how it got that way in terms of, because my parents definitely had their gender roles.
Yeah.
My dad always drove.
Okay. Same.
My mom always, not always, but for the most part, would do, she was a stay-at-home mom. My dad worked.
11 kids.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And, but my mom would do the laundry and make dinner. But I saw my dad cook from time to time. I saw my mom mow the lawn sometimes. So it wasn't my parents were always, they had their roles, but it was never, they always raised us as they were always a team. And so within that, there was nothing neither of them were willing to do. It was never I literally don't mow the lawn. I'm the woman, or I don't cook. So I don't remember, I was never taught to be super manly. And I say that as it wasn't like my dad was always
don't cry,
never. And I think I was lucky that way because
That's why you turned out so great.
I was never raised to prove my masculinity.
But
I don't remember those moments. I'm just thinking about it right now.
And did your peers, did you have friends who would say things like that? Did you get that message from outside of your home?
Sure. I was definitely throughout my young life at times teased about my masculinity, I think.
What would they say?
You still are teased.
Probably.
People say,
what do you mean?
You read his comments.
Well, yeah, some people claim that you're feminine.
Sure. Or I could be, well, now it's like, I've been single, or there was
Are you gay?
Well, that was, I did the whole, I did the show, and I kissed a guy, and then
Right.
that report came out. But yes, I've always,
Wait, I missed this. So you kissed a guy and then
On the show.
people freaked out? Or
Sure.
Okay.
Well,
But someone took it out of context.
Oh.
the show
to
hasn't
get
come out
clicks.
yet. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
oh, sorry.
not minus
Okay.
that. That's minus that. Yes, my whole life I've never been accused of being overly macho, especially never.
Right.
I also have never tried to be.
Right.
And growing up as a kid in Wisconsin, that was back in the day where words like metrosexual came out, and I always remember being like, this is annoying. I'm just a kid in Wisconsin who actually likes fashion, and I don't think I need a name to describe my where I grew up around a bunch of guys who didn't care or were intimidated by that. And so, yeah, I was always from time to time, but I was always very confident. I never really cared. And so it always kind of won out, so to speak.
Yeah.
If
And
that
do you
makes
think
sense.
that those guys were uncomfortable but also envious? Like, do you think that they also wanted to, because
Sure, maybe a little bit.
right,
Yeah.
because I think there's this ideal that if you care about your appearance, right, then you're doing what a woman does. And the number one thing that you have to do as a man is never do anything that's feminine, right? What are the first insults that you get?
I
for
used
a
to
guy?
love wearing pink shirts
There we go.
because I knew I looked good in pink. And I just remember being a young age, and I just remember being like, as long as I know I look good, I look good.
Well,
And
that's
I-
amazing.
I will say, the most of the time I got teased when I was a young adult or a boy is I got teased by other men when I got attention from women.
Oh.
So I was
there
like,
you go.
yeah.
Again, envy,
So
right?
it didn't hurt you too much.
I was like, I'm not saying it never bothered me. Don't get me wrong, for sure. But I never felt the need to be overly macho. Again, keep in mind that I was always the jock in high school. I always I did a lot of other things, but I always found it was more I'd rather be surprised and be like, I'm actually quite handy. I know you don't think
Yeah.
that about me, but
Right.
I've made wooden shelves.
Right. But it's like men have multitudes too, right? That just because a woman, I don't know, wears a suit, right, or a tuxedo at a wedding, it doesn't mean she's not a woman, right? It doesn't mean that she doesn't like to be feminine too. And we give this latitude to women, right, to do masculine things and do feminine things. But for men, it's if you wear pink, then they're surprised that you like woodworking or that you are a football player. And I wonder, to me, that's sort of the unfinished gender revolution. Why is it badass for a little girl to be an engineer, but it's not badass for a little boy to want to be a nurse?
Yeah, there's that. Or play
Right.
the flute.
Yes. Did you play the flute?
No, I played the violin. I was
Oh,
terrible.
that's even cuter.
Is it?
Oh, do you have photos? You should put them up.
I played the
That's so
violin because in the
cute.
fourth grade, the reason why I got into violin is because when they were it's a time where they kind of introduced the whole fourth grade class, hey, if you want to sign up for violin or orchestra, you can. And the head of orchestra was this big guy, giant, funny and charismatic, but he was also the football coach and the track coach.
Oh, that's dope.
And I was very attracted to the juxtaposition
Yeah.
of the violin teacher was also the football coach.
That's so cool.
And that's what I was always, even at a young age, attracted to the difference.
Not conforming.
not
It seems like
conforming.
you were never
I've
interested in conforming.
No. All right. So what else we got for tests?
What else do I have for what?
I mean, you asked me, do I remember?
Yes. What's the hardest thing about being a man?
Oh my God.
No,
Where do I
don't get it
start?
started.
Go. Hit me.
No, I don't. What's the hardest thing about being a man?
Because when I've asked men
Be honest.
that, I was often, the first person to ask them that, which I find ridiculous because I feel like we, even back there, just getting coffee, we're talking about things we hate about being a woman, right? Complaining about society standards and how hard they are to meet.
I'm really not trying to play. I mean, I got it pretty good in terms of my life. So in terms of hard, I think people have a hard time understanding other people. So in the dating world, I mean, yes, women can be confusing sometimes as men, right? Is it
How
hard,
so?
hard to be a man?
How so? No, tell us about this confusion because I hear about it all the time. It's in the book. But I'm curious what your take is on it because I do think we're living through a confusing time for men.
But men can be confusing to women. I guess that's what I'm
Absolutely.
saying. I don't know if it means I'm not trying. What is the hardest thing about being a man?
Be honest, because you've
I really don't-
expressed some stuff to me.
Ooh.
No, but sometimes in it's sometimes as guys, like if you want to be an ally, you want to do the right thing. Sometimes you feel like with certain people, you're not going to win.
Sure.
I don't want to put that on as a guy or a girl. It could just be sometimes you're just like, I can't win with this person.
Right. So that you're always going to do it wrong, right? That someone's going to find a flaw in the way that you're showing allyship.
Yeah, I mean, again, like also I feel like talking about the times we're in versus like in general, is it like what's the hardest thing about being a guy? I think those are two different questions, right? Like sometimes we talk about like, and I want to get into it with you because I know you talk a lot about toxic masculinity. Like what is that, you know, and defining that, because we now live in a time where there's like, it's whenever time there's progress, there's a lot of good that happens, but sometimes things get overblown. And then you have things like trigger words and trigger phrases, and they become like trendy and in vogue. And then, you know, anytime anyone does anything, you get like pointed the finger, like, oh, that's toxic masculinity.
Yes.
And maybe it is sometimes, maybe it's not. And even if you do make a mistake and you're like, well, hey, teach me about it, you become the bad guy, as opposed to like, well, I mean, fine, I'm trying to learn. And then there's this big confusion, and even Rochelle and I have debated like, where do you draw the line between wanting to be an ally and asking questions and have people on the other side help you out, or is it your responsibility to just figure it out on your own? And that can be challenging. Again, I don't know if that's an argument about like being a guy versus just the times we live in.
I agree. And I actually don't use the term toxic masculinity anymore.
You don't?
Because, and I actually took it out of the book like 10 days before the book came out. I called my editor. She was not happy. I love her for
talk about what is the toxic masculinity and at least the idea of it, and then tell me why you don't use it and why you took it out.
Right.
I'm really curious about this.
So toxic masculinity is a term or a problem basically, and that's sort of the common label that we're using right now that I think needs a little makeover. But it basically signifies these pressures. It actually signifies all of the negative behaviors that men are engaging in that are related to these ideals of masculinity. So being dominant, being aggressive. If there's a school shooting, and like a perfect example, I think is, there's a school shooting and some guy, which is 99% of mass shooters are male, and we can talk about that later, will have put out a manifesto, right, as we know, like with the Santa Barbara shooting, saying like women are, don't want to sleep with me, so I'm going to go after them. So it's rooted in misogyny, it's rooted in a hatred of women, and it's rooted in sort of a violent expression of being a man. And so toxic masculinity is used as a label to talk about the changes that we need to do when we're talking to men about masculinity in the way that we're raising boys. And I think that it is not a useful term. And that was through, I've been working on this book for 4 years. So I talked to a lot of men about this. And through these conversations, it's still in the book in the quotes that men give, because I'm not going to change men's quotes and their own words. I also use it occasionally because it's difficult to give a solution without giving a name to the problem. But I prefer the term idealized masculinity, because to me it is a better parallel with the conversation that we've been having with women, which is if someone had come up to me when I was 14 and had said, "Have you heard about toxic femininity?" I would have been like less interested, as if someone compared to someone saying, "Have you heard about female empowerment? Have you heard about feminism?" Right. So I think that the words that we use are super important. They're extremely important in the world that we're living in right now, especially when we're clearly disagreeing on a lot. And so idealized masculinity to me is more about a conversation, instead of just talking about the bad behaviors that I think honestly a minority of men are engaging in. I think that we need to talk about the pressures that lead to those behaviors, right? So one thing that I think about all the time is, when there's a bully, for example, we often think about the victims, right? We're like trying to treat the victims. And in the same way, when there's mass shootings, when there's, we talk about violence against women, we're treating the women. And to me, it's like, who's treating the bully, right? And maybe if we treated the bully, and if we treated and tried to heal this person and understand why they're causing pain to other people, and what pain probably they were caused and is causing them to then sort of transmit that pain. Wouldn't we live in a much better society? And wouldn't that be a much more productive way to actually solve our problems? So I'm more interested in talking about how this system hurts women, but it also hurts men. And I'm not interested in telling men I'm not interested in telling men how to be men. I'm not interested in telling you can't be aggressive anymore. You can't be, you can't wrestle, like do whatever you want. I just want there to be as much latitude and freedom for you to express yourself in the world as I have. And I think that if we give boys and men more tools in order to be who they want to be, wear skinny jeans if they want to, wear pink if they want to, do all of these, different things, then maybe they won't have anger, right? Maybe it won't come out in forms that are negative.
Do you think a lot of that comes from in terms of like the anger and aggression? And I'm listening to you talking, so I guess I'm just kind of going back and thinking about how it does or doesn't apply to me. And again, it's just weird because like I've never felt that. I always give my parents the credit. But that's the thing. It's like I make a lot of jokes about like my interest in fashion or dancing when I was young, but I was also very into like, I was the sports guy. I love sports and all the things that like traditionally, you would say are masculine. I just never felt the need to identify with that.
Right. But that's a minority, right?
I guess, but there are times where I very like to be the traditionally quote unquote the man in a relationship, and there are other aspects of the relationship I don't like care. I joke about how like I'm a really good ironer and I like to cook.
Oh my God.
I'm so bad at ironing.
I also fucking hate folding laundry. It's like to me, it's not about like roles. It's about like what are you good at and what am I good at and what do you can't stand and
I wonder if because you are like tall and good looking and charismatic that gave you the leeway to be able to do that stuff.
I'm not in any way suggesting, but like BDE versus small, like the energy you have kind of thing when people talk about that, but I'm saying
that you had these other things that kind of protected you.
100%. I mean, that's why this is my favorite example of this, right? Where men can engage in intimacy with other men in certain scenarios. So why can't men, hold hands in public, but they can slap each other's butts when they're wearing a football uniform? That to me is like very interesting, right? Like, and it's not just, men can hug or men can hold hands, right? They're slapping each other's butts. Like that's another level of intimacy that I'm all for. But I think that it's interesting that men can only, have the permission to do that when they're wearing like the big shoulder pads and the big helmet. And it's like, I'm a man, by the way.
It's
no homo, right?
If it's not permission, I can honestly say I've never had the thought or urge to like hold another guy's hand. And I'm very comfortable around men.
But you make a lot of flirty Instagram.
Sure, because it's fun and I get it like, I'll do it on because it's fun.
I feel like that's the equivalent.
That's the equivalent?
A little bit.
And
I know it gets a reaction and I think it's funny and I'm secure with myself to know that people are going to like raise questions and like keeps people on their toes. But for me to hold someone's hand, that's a personal moment.
Sure.
And like if I'm alone at a park and with my best friend and like we're just like, you want to hold hands? Because like I feel alone. Mm-hmm. I guess sure, but I'm saying I personally have never thought of it or had the edge, and it's not because I'm afraid of what it means or whatever. Mm-hmm. I just personally don't, and I know that women do that a lot more often. Right. And I don't feel. To me, it's not about being judged or what people are going to say. I just haven't had the urge.
Right. I mean, holding hands is on a spectrum. Writing cute Instagrams and saying, and cuddling with another guy on Instagram. There are a lot of men who don't want to do that. I mean, I was on Dax Shepard's podcast, and he says all the time men will say how much they love him, and they'll hashtag no homo. And it's just like because, and again, I think that I want you to recognize that you are an anomaly and that you are extremely secure in your manhood and masculinity. And unfortunately...
Are you asking me to pat myself on the back? Because I can do that.
No, I want you to realize that you are leading by example. And I think that's amazing. And you're probably giving permission to so many men who follow you and listen to you to also do that. And I think that's really wonderful.
That's an interesting point about the no homo. I guess I've never really done that. I'm sure I definitely have said no homo but I guess I've less and less of that thought of, like, for example, my friend Brad Goreski, when we'll constantly comment on each other's Instagram and it's strongly suggestive that maybe we are in love. I just think it's funny. And I know that like, I don't really care. In fact, I deliberately don't. I haven't thought about writing no homo, but if I did, I would deliberately not do it because that would go against what the point of writing it is like and just makes people wonder.
Right.
Because I don't really care, and I just think Brad's great as a friend.
But a lot of men don't want to let people wonder, right? A lot of men, it's the worst thing that if I'm going on a date with a guy and I say, oh my God, I thought you were gay. I feel like that's like not the best, right? That guy will probably feel threatened. And feel belittled.
Sure.
And there's this connotation, right? That being gay is the worst, means you're a woman.
I've had that said to me before.
But see, you don't care. But I think most men do care.
I can't say that
many
it doesn't.
Men do care.
I can't say that it doesn't affect me at all. It probably affects me less now. I've become more and more confident in myself. I can't say that I was like totally immune to it, but I guess I just dealt with that earlier in my life, and I just became very confident. I'm like, I just know that I'm not.
Yeah.
Like I've never was on the spectrum. Like I very much love women, and so it was like. It just never bothered me.
Right.
I also just learned at an early age that like, if you do get asked that question, that doesn't stop women from being attracted to you. It just makes them more curious about you. And the more mysterious or curious you are, the harder to figure out. It's actually an advantage to you.
I love that. That's good advice.
I've recently, Rochelle has noticed that once in a while, I have this like chain that I attach my wallet to, and I wear it from time to time. I went to Top Man. It came with a pair of pants. I'm like, I'm kind of into this look. I know it was like outdated. I don't even know if it's back, but I'm kind of digging it.
Ooh.
And I've been wearing it. And I haven't yet not worn it around women, friends or whatever, dating, who haven't noticed it and teased me about it.
Oh.
And I've said like, listen, I know you don't like it, but I do.
And women and men,
And
right?
immediately the women have been like, well, fuck, now I think it looks good on you. And it's just that confident of being like, I'm wearing it because I like it.
Yeah.
I just
care
think
what you think.
I don't care what you think.
Right. And that's the sexiest thing you can do as a man, right? I think men believe or are because of our society and because of, again, everything that you're talking about, right? Women and men are reinforcing this idea that if you have anything feminine, there's something wrong with you. Like proving that you're a man in all these manly ways is, I think, far less sexy than a man just being very secure and being like, I love this pink t-shirt and this chain on my wallet.
Well, then if you like pop out the masculine things, they're like, whoa, where does this come from? I don't know. I mean, yeah, I just always thought I'd lean into that. I just never felt that need.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm opening up your book, and it says, Chapter 4, men are slaves to their bodies and their nether regions.
That's a myth. I'm not making that as a statement.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I'm just
it's
curious.
one of the myths.
Just the thought
Yes.
about. I'm curious. What is that topic? Just to talk a little bit about your book, but specifically, what do you mean?
Well,
I found that fascinating of some of the chapters because we always talk about how women are objectified for their bodies and how men see the women and this comes across as very like specific to bodies. It seems to be contrary to what we see out there in society.
Yeah. So I think there's this myth out there. I know. And I document all of the ways that we see it in pop culture, that men want more sex all the time and women want more cuddling all the time, and that we are very different in our needs of intimacy. And I am interested in sort of playing around with that myth and sort of questioning that myth and whether it's really true. I'm not denying that testosterone doesn't have certain effects on men and that we're not different. Obviously, there are some big differences, but I think that those differences are magnified by our society, right? By the idea that I was raised in a society where I needed to, we were separated in Canada, by the way, like a progressive country. We were separated, girls and boys, in sex ed. The guys were told about masturbation and pleasure, and then I was told, this is what you must do to never get pregnant. This is what you must do to protect yourself. This is what you must do to never get raped. So sex was never, oh my gosh, it's embarrassing. Like as a feminist, how long it took me, and then I'm still working on my own like sexual liberation and like pleasure and putting that as a primary focus in my relationships instead of, am I pleasing my partner? Am I sort of overcoming my own shame when it comes to my body and my own pleasure and my own decisions. And with men, I think that there's also a lot of repression in terms of how to get intimacy, right? So when we talk about the butt slapping in sports or other examples of this, of how I think difficult it is for men to just get intimacy from even their friendships, right? So there's a whole chapter about this, about bromance, right? So men tend to have less friends than women, and those friendships are less in depth. That's the data.
Really?
Yes.
Because I've not knowing any data,
again,
not doing research, perceptions.
Yes.
I feel like women always have that one best friend.
Oh.
And then that can change. And guys, I've noticed have more groups of friends, but that's not the case.
So men do, again, this is all laid out in the data, but men tend to do shoulder to shoulder friendships. So that's called like watching games, drinking a beer together. So you're not staring at each other, you're staring at the beer, and you're, connecting, but through an activity, right? So you're going to, you're on a basketball league or you're watching sports. And women tend to connect with each other more. And they tend to have more, I think, leeway to have an intimate connection just based on that connection. And so men, as they grow older, especially straight men who are married to women, often their female partner becomes their only friend. And I see it with my dad. I see it that my mom just has much more ability and to maintain friendships than my dad. My dad just doesn't necessarily have the same interest. And what happens is that in relationships, women are complaining a lot about the fact that they are the sole support network for their male partner, and that can be extremely taxing. And I know in my own relationships with men, when we've been going through issues, I've been talking about it to several friends, and I've been trying to work through it. And with I have a support network that I can go to, and I would often ask. I would ask my ex-boyfriend. I was like, "Who did you talk about this with?" And he'd be like, "You." And I was like, no matter, like, no wonder this isn't going anywhere. And not to say that, you should talk about it to 10 of your friends and work it all out that way. But men don't have the same impulse to get support when they are stressed. And so that becomes really hard in relationships. And actually, I think is causing a lot more divorces because again, if you're only getting that connection through your partner, that's a tax on women.
Do you think it matters whether the guy is getting it from another man or another woman?
I think that a lot of men that I talked to said that their closest friends are women, and that often they would, and I think this makes me sad of. Even some men are really close to other men, but they say, I don't go to him when I have a problem because he's not always helpful.
I'm asking that question, thinking about my adult life.
Yeah.
And I look back and I know that throughout my adult life in dating, the person would change, but I always, like whether it was someone I worked with, I would befriend a woman who was older than me and but we became actual friends, but they became my confidant. And it would be always this random person. I became friends with them, but they weren't part of my hangout group.
Yeah.
It was someone that was a little bit of an outsider, but I developed a relationship with them, but usually a woman where if I was having a hard time with my girlfriend at the time, that would be the person we'd go to lunch and I'd vent to and talk to with. But it was typically always a woman. It wasn't like my best guy friends. And I'm not saying we didn't talk from time to time, but thinking back, it's like when I would really open up and really just they would know everything, it was never.
Why do you think that is?
I think part of it too is just I just didn't feel like they would understand.
That's interesting.
It's I don't remember feeling like I had a hard time telling them. It was just more what am I going to get out of this?
Well, isn't that interesting? That, and this really taps into a larger topic, which is emotional education. We go to school, we learn about math. There's all these curriculums about, learning what the names of the clouds are and what the metals and the table, what is that called? The chemicals.
Periodic table?
Periodic table. Yeah, I remember that, right? Do you remember that? So there's all this curriculum, but there's what about emotional education? What about attachment styles? What about kindness? What about empathy, right?
We learned about attachment styles.
Oh my gosh. I can't, it's so, I learned about attachment styles 6 months ago and then I talked about it to every person and every person was like, why didn't I know this?
What attachment style are you?
Ugh, what are you? Okay, we should say it go. We both say it.
I don't really know. I think I'm all of them.
Oh no! So you're insecure. So you're insecure avoidant. So you have maybe both. Sorry,
He's avoidant.
Oh, I'm avoidant too.
I think I'm secure avoidant.
Secure avoidant?
Well,
no, if you're secure.
I grew up very
just made one up.
Like my parents are like, I don't know. My parents made me feel very like when the way it was described to me, like I always was loved very much as a child, and they always made me feel very confident and comfortable expressing them to my feelings to them, and I never felt like there wasn't a place I could go.
Yeah.
And I'm a good communicator that way. I think as I've gotten older in my dating life, I've avoided situations and I just kind of push it away, and I don't know. And I think that's just as a result of me becoming more of a skeptic and more of a realist and less of, less naive and less...
Naive? What do you mean?
Well, naive, it's like, I think, maybe not, like... What's the phrase? Ignorance is bliss. I really believe that ignorance is bliss in a lot of times,
But in a relationship, like not talking about how you're feeling?
In life sometimes, I think there's this balance of ignorance and bliss and perspective and cynicism.
Okay.
Like a perspective's great. I'm a huge believer in it. It's helped me along, but the more perspective you get, like you almost become too realistic and too cynical, and then you start like playing out scenarios in your head because you have the quote unquote perspective, and then you just kind of dismiss it and you don't really live your life, as opposed to sometimes being ignorant, not necessarily ignorant in a not awareness, but just kind of like a young, dumb person. You just haven't experienced things, and newness is fun and exciting. And then learning these things, it's blissful and exciting, and it's a euphoric drug. Trying anything for the first time is exciting. And when and so there's a little bit of that.
Interesting. But avoiding things, so I'm an avoidant, and so I'm working on that. But avoiding things, it doesn't make them go away. It actually makes them, gives you more, it doesn't get rid of your problems, it gives you more problems. And if you're an avoidant and you're using people to avoid your problems, you're only bringing in those people into your problems.
Well, to that point, I feel like as an avoidant, and the tendency I do have, it's a bit of Groundhog's Day. Where like you avoid things to that point and they don't go away. No. You're just like...
They grow, yeah.
Well, I just don't want to deal with this now, or I don't have to deal with this because I have dealt with it. And then like a week later, you're having that same thought process in your head of like not doing the thing that you didn't want to do or waste your time, but you're still like reassessing it right now. And you're like, well, it's still Wednesday.
Yeah, I mean, and it's hard. It makes you... It means that you have to lean into discomfort, right? And realize that when you're avoiding things, it's not that the thing that I had to understand is that I wasn't avoiding it. I wasn't an avoidant because I didn't want intimacy. I was an avoidant because I was afraid of intimacy, right? And intimacy was actually a threat to me. And that my reaction when I was uncomfortable was to move away.
When you say intimacy, I mean, I'm assuming you're talking about all sorts of kinds.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, obviously, like in my romantic lives, but also if what's the saying? The way you do anything is the way that you do everything, right? So
way you do anything
is the way that you do everything. So the way that you are in relationships with romantically is probably going to be the way, or reflective of the way that you were in relationship with your parents, in your family, in your work life. Often we bring these issues into everything. And so I saw it again. I mean, the attachment styles too, people think that you have to be like traumatized and have grown up in a tragic, abusive household to have an insecure attachment, but half of us have insecure attachments.
Well, the way I understood attachment styles, and we had our guest Sylvie, who kind of specializes in it, is that everyone has some sort of attachment style. It comes
everyone
from
does, yes.
Everyone, whether it's triggered by a traumatic event or just
the way that you understood. Yes,
you have one.
Yes.
And it can change, and it's fluid, but you're always doing something based off of things that have happened. Right. You're reacting to life.
And half of us are securely attached, and half of us are insecurely attached. And then the insecurely attached fall into avoidant or what's the anxious, right? And some people have both, but basically, and this is the thing that I just because a lot of people are listening, and that this was really helpful to me. Avoidants often find anxious people, like they find each other because one person is afraid to lose a relationship and one person is afraid to lose themselves, and those people always find each other. And very often in relationships, there'll be one person that's like, I just don't want to lose my independence, and the other person's like, I don't want to lose you. And it's those relationships often are super exhilarating. They're roller coasters. They go really fast. They're very passionate, but at the end of the day, they're very unstable and they're difficult because you're constantly pushing away, pushing in, pushing away.
I love unstable and difficult. Sounds so fun.
It's addictive. It's addictive, and that's what we think love is, right? It's like highs and lows, and it's like a drug, but actually, love is uncomfortable. Like when you're actually connecting with someone and you're building intimacy, it can be actually truly not feel good. And
Like what?
it can feel, you feel seen, right? And that's really hard to feel seen. And because the whole point of intimacy is, so we go on dates, right? And we talk about all of the great things that we do, right? On a first date, you're showing the best version of yourself. You're wearing your best outfit. You're saying, oh, I love to do, all these hobbies. And then what do we share? What are these great things that we like to do together? There's this philosopher called Alain de Botton, who I love, who says on your first date, you shouldn't talk about what makes you great. You should talk about what makes you nuts. We're
great.
all nuts, right? And the person, and he wrote an article called Why You'll Marry the Wrong Person. And he says, you basically have to find the person who knows what makes you nuts and can tolerate it.
Yeah.
Right. So,
you've said that. Yeah.
Right.
And I'm not a philosopher, but I feel like.
Yeah. Well,
right.
It's
like
still a
real
different
love, it's like when you
perspective.
can truly be yourself for good or bad and still feel accepted. And people ask me what I'm looking for in a relationship. And at this point in my life, it just comes down to what I describe as ultimately feeling safe.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Safe in a sense that I can be myself, and I'm with someone who knows how to critique me, but not criticize me, to build me up and not break me down. And like help, people like to say, well, I want to be with someone who helps me make a better version of myself. That sounds great. But like sometimes when people hear that, it's like, well, I want to make you a better version of yourself.
No.
So I'm just going to like remind you of all the things you do. And it comes across as sometimes very judgmental. And I think we all make those mistakes. And because it's are we condescending or, things like that. But you want to be with someone who has that right amount of balance to like just make you feel comfortable with who you are. So even when you are your worst version, you don't feel judged and threatened.
And that you need to hide that from them. And we're all hiding those parts. And because we're trained to do that, right? And a lot of the book is talking about male shame, and because I think we talk a lot about women shame, but there's also a lot of men are feeling a lot of shame too.
I was asking about that because for all the conversations about toxic masculinity and where we are in our culture in terms of the awareness of equality of women, which is all great and it needs to happen. But when I'm having drinks with my women friends and we're sitting down and we're in the privacy of like a bar, we'll talk of things about like the Me Too movement, things like that. And I'll hear from a lot of my women friends who still are like, well, I like it when a guy does this. And they'll kind of like argue against the things that we're hearing in terms of progress. And they'll play into these stereotypes of masculinity of like, and men will feel not necessarily just judged by their buddies and the beer. It's from other women who are like, don't be a pussy. Like I want a man who's doing X, Y, and Z, and I don't want a guy who is coming across as necessarily feminine. Like in person, I've never felt weirded about that in terms of like, I've never been worried about women criticizing me about that. But I see, just talking to my women friends, that comes up. I think we as men sometimes are just as afraid, and we're trying to be masculine for these women so that we're not judged. And so it's not just coming from our buddies, and the peer pressure is not just coming from men. It is coming from women.
It's coming from everyone, right? It's the saying of the fish don't know that they're swimming in water because that's just what they're swimming in. So we're all in this water. We're all in this system. We're all raised in this culture. And I actually went on a chivalry diet for the book, way harder than a juice diet. Actually, I can't do those diets. I don't know how you guys do it here.
I don't.
You guys don't eat bread. I don't get it. But I kept eating bread, but I decided to basically stop engaging in everything that you're talking about. That I was writing a book about men needing to give up these ideals and questioning, why do you believe in this? Why do you have to always be a man and prove you're a man? Why are men taught about all the transactional aspects of dating that you have to, initiate, or that you have to pay half of the bill, but you don't know that you should be asking follow-up questions, right? And follow-up questions are very important. I want everyone to hear that. Women love follow-up questions. I think men do too, right? It's like, I proved that I'm listening. I'm not just like...
Show you actual interest. What do you do for a living?
Yes.
Oh, great.
Oh, cool.
Next question.
Tell me more about that.
Tell me more. Do you really like it?
Yes.
Do you think you're going to keep doing that?
Exactly.
Doesn't sound like you're really passionate about it. What would you really like to be doing?
Exactly. There we go. Follow-up questions. You've been asking me a lot of follow-up questions. Thank you. I appreciate it. So yes, women buy into this too. And I realized that I was doing that. So I was dating someone at the time, and I decided, and also I was this big feminist. I'm still this big feminist, but I loved being treated like a little princess. Right. And so I like being,
Can you be both?
pampered. I can be both. But I realized that because I was so interested in society's expectations of how men are supposed to treat me, I was choosing people based on the wrong things, right? So I was choosing to be in relationships with men who, bought me, were like, let's go on this trip, or, sent me like a big cookie cake for, at work, or like, right, these like edible arrangements. And it's like, who cares? Yeah.
He opens the door and buys me gifts. We're in love.
Yes. And actually, what's your love language?
I've taken it once. I'm pretty even with 3 and like a 0 on 2. Gifts, or it's a 0.
Me too.
What are
I
they?
feel like your words of affirmation.
Words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, physical touch.
I think physical touch, quality time, and words of affirmation. I'm like the service and acts of service in gifts.
You're not
0.
Wow, interesting. See, I'm acts of service. I'm like that's a big one for me.
What is acts of service again?
Well, basically, acts of service to me is I know that you had a really important presentation today that you were really nervous for, so I made you breakfast. Or you're stuck at the airport.
Does nothing for me.
Oh wow! See, I'm all that. Like knowing I can depend on you.
It's
extremely
nice.
important.
I appreciate it. It's cool, but I can make breakfast.
Okay, but
you do acts of service a lot. Like he'll like bring in donuts and stuff like that. So maybe that's.
But even maybe that's a hard example. Like
But I think to like, oh, that'd be nice.
You do.
I try to be aware of
it.
just being a good person from time to time, where I'm like, this is easy for me to do, so I'm going to do it. I try to have this mindset. If something's easy for you to do, sometimes just do it, even and I do it with the thought process I'm not necessarily expecting something in return.
Well, that's the point, because that's and the thing is, love languages is maybe that's not important to you, but that's if you were with someone who that was important for.
I totally well, yeah, because it's easy. I'll make you breakfast, and I'm a hero.
Yeah, there you go. But knowing your partners, how they like to be loved, then is so much. I mean, a lot of people don't even have this conversation, and they're just mad. They're like, "How dare you not? You didn't unload the dishwasher." And it's like, "Oh, that was important to you." I was, I don't know. I was like billing this whole weekend we were going to do together, but all I needed to do.
I don't know, like,
exactly.
Yes,
exactly. Yeah. And see, I'm not words of. I mean, I guess I do. Everyone loves. I mean, again, we all love all those things, right? No one's like, I hate physical touch. But yeah. So my love language is not gifts, even though so why was I choosing people based on something that I don't care about, right? Why was I choosing men who were showing me affection in all these ways that I don't need and I don't want?
So when you say a chivalry diet, what do you mean by that?
Well, so
what are you actively doing?
I actively stopped engaging in accepting gifts, and if they were given to me, I was like, thank you, but I didn't I wasn't like, thank you so much, like, oh my God, you're right. I didn't play into it. I also, so we went on a little weekend getaway, and he booked the Airbnb, and then I was like, yeah, how much was that? And then he just like mentioned, he's like, oh yeah, I got a good deal, blah blah. And I just Venmo'd him like half of the price of the house without saying anything. And then
was he offended?
And then once we were he didn't say anything at first, and then once we were there, he was like, so I noticed that you Venmo me after the price of that. Yeah, I mean, I just thank you. Right. and I said, yeah, I really appreciate you getting the house, and I just wanted it to be, I wanted to show you that I was excited about this weekend too, or something like that, right? And in the end, what happened? So I thought I was going to lose out. I was like, oh, now I'm going to have to pay for my own French fries and my own, Airbnbs. But what I found was that it totally changed my relationship, and this power dynamic that I had in my relationships, where when one person's doing that, they're in control, right? When one person's like,
we talk about this all the time,
right? It's like, it's a way to actually exert control. And I don't think men are trying to do this because they're bad people. Yeah, exactly.
There's power in every
relationship.
And it shifts sometimes all the time.
Exactly.
And there's different ways we get and have and receive power.
100%. And so I was giving up not giving up power. That's probably not even the right term. I just wasn't, because I would be in this situation of like not being in control and not being in power. I just didn't say what I needed as much, right? Like, and that weekend, I really just was like very clear and emotionally, like what I needed and what I didn't need, and felt freer to say those things, and it made our relationship way better.
Do you think sometimes as women, speaking about like the tradition is like guy's gonna fit the bill for whatever things, that subconsciously they feel like almost like this guilt? It's like, well, he paid for everything, so like, I mean, of course, we're just going to do what he wants to do.
Yes.
And as long as it's like reasonable, like sort of him not like taking me to the football game all weekend, but like, I'm just going to like, I'm just happy to be with him.
Exactly. And it's unconscious because I had no idea that was playing into my own behavior. And
so when you kind of fit the bill too, you're like more just, well, I mean, I don't know, it's half my weekend.
Right. And we're a team, right? It's like coming back to what you're saying about your parents, right? Like, and I talk about this data in the book. Same-sex couples are like far happier than straight couples on several different points. And which is kind of surprising because there's still, you can't even get like a wedding cake done if you're gay, right, in this country, right? Or like someone can refuse that to you. There's a lot of discrimination, marginalization, obviously. And so I was really curious about that. And when I looked into it, it's really, first of all, they have more like equitable distribution of domestic chores and roles, which is what you talk about with your parents, right? Like one parent like to mow the lawn sometimes, like I'm in the mood today, like I'm gonna do it. I love to cook, like I'm just really good at it. Great. I love cleaning the bathroom. Sure. They make choices based on what they like and what they want to do, which should be how we are in relationships, right? We like fall into these roles. And even when we don't conform, like we have to explain it, right? We have to justify it, right? If you're a guy and you're a stay-at-home dad, you have to kind of explain why. And a lot of men do it and it's amazing, but it's like they're transgressing this sort of norm that we've totally made up. These are things that we've made up. Totally. And don't apply anymore and actually aren't making us happier in our relationships.
So like, you live in the cul-de-sac and your buddy comes over and you're ironing a shirt. Yeah. And you're like, well, I mean, like, hey, like the wife's busy.
Exactly.
I don't usually do this.
Right. You have to be like arm wrestling a bear with the other hand or something, right? Like, it's cool. I'm still a man. No homo, right? Like, I don't know.
It is true. It's interesting though, guys, we talk about that. Like I have no problem and still enjoy the old open up the door for the I like chivalry. I think there is a place for that without like having to, and that balance, right? Yes. Of like still being chivalrous, talking about a first date and fitting the bill. Like, yeah, I want to pay for the first date. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't want to arm wrestle you for that. Like, I always joke about, I love the insincere No. Like, I got it. You're like, oh, great.
Just pulling out nothing.
I love the insincere. And then after a while, it's nice to just, you know what, I'm going to get the coffee, kind of thing. And just knowing that and so I like that play, like it, to me, it would seem slightly, I don't know why, because maybe we're just taught this and maybe it's totally made up. It almost feels slightly unromantic if we were just splitting everything transactionally.
I agree. I don't believe in splitting the bill, by the way. I mean, I Venmoed for half the house because it was a large amount, but I think this is my own personal thing. I think I do like when the guy will just offer to pay for the first date, and then I'll pay for the second one. And then you pay for the third one. And we just, it's like I'm in the way that I would do with a friend. Yes. I don't know. It's like we're going to see each other again.
But in a way, right, that we're not necessarily keeping tabs.
Yes. Exactly.
Yes.
Like it just kind of
develops.
Like you're not, and like it just happens. And maybe it is this like fitting up for dessert or coffee or like bringing over like a dessert. Yes. I don't know. It's not keeping score.
It's in the way we do it with our friends.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you came into my work and it's like I get half off or whatever. I'm gonna get it. Oh, you just got this big promotion. Like your turn. Like you just do things for people based on so many different factors. Other than, am I a man? Do I have a penis? Like, is this what I have to do? Am I a real man? If I it's just so arbitrary.
So since we have a lot of female audience, we have some.
What's your percentage? What's your markdown? Do you know?
We call them our 10%ers.
It's probably less than 10%.
I think it's less than 10%.
Yeah. Maybe with this, we can get more men.
We think we have a great podcast for men. We love our women listeners, but
our 10%ers are very in touch with their emotions.
I love
that. They tend to be kind of more anxious.
We're getting our women to bring some guys over, but it's like we unscientifically 90-10.
You probably have like a lot of secret followers. Yeah. Who are ghost following you.
But for our women listeners, what are some ways to help us men kind of break down those kind of stereotypes of masculinity? And not that it's on you women, but yeah, we can all, I'm of the belief let's not point fingers, let's figure out solutions. Yes. It's not about the blame game. It's about what can we all do better to live in a society that is just easier and and we're wasting, let's waste less energy living up to false made up expectations that we have put on ourselves. So how can we do that?
Yeah. So first of all, there's this amazing book called For the Love of Men. A New Vision for Mindful Masculinity by Liz Plank. I wrote this book for men. I also wrote this book for women. I want women to be free of a lot of the emotional labor that they're doing in their relationships with men. I do think that there's an unfair burden, coming back to, when you're the main confidant of your male partner, and that you're expected to figure all this out. It's a lot. And I don't think it's always sexy, right? When you're just the therapist and the girlfriend. And so I want this to be a tool for men to figure out not on their own, but like with themselves and with each other, right? We have so many women's spaces where women are gathering and talking about what it's like to be a woman, talking about these challenges, talking about differences and how they're not conforming, and tips and advice, right? How do you not become insecure when you're looking at your friends' Instagrams? I don't know, stuff that we deal with. I think that there should be spaces for men to be able to have that intimacy with each other. I think it would be really great if you could talk to your best friends about things that are really hard and that be helpful. I think that if everyone had more ability to emotionally express themselves, maybe your male friends would more be able to be there for you and support you. I think that women should also examine the way that their own gender operates in the world, right? Their own buy-in of these stereotypes about men and how they are perpetuating them, right? So if they're asking men to be more expressive and to be more sensitive, are you gonna love him when he does that?
Yeah.
Are you gonna be comfortable when he breaks down and he cries and you are on the receiving end of that?
As opposed to looking at me like, don't be.
Yes, exactly. Right. It's like, yeah. And I think examining the contradictions in our expectations of men in our society and having empathy for men, that like, and having empathy for men does not mean not holding men accountable, right? You can hold someone accountable, and actually I think holding someone accountable is the best thing that you can do for them sometimes, right? That we can have empathy for men that they're growing up in a society that is changing very rapidly, in which the behaviors that were acceptable literally a year ago, right?
Yes.
Or 2 years ago,
Yes.
are now something that you could get fired and shunned for. And so that's stressful. I think that we can, as women, recognize that can be a difficult world to navigate, while agreeing that is the world that we should be living in, where women are not, threatened in their workspaces and don't have like men's dicks lying around when they're trying to work. Truly. So yeah, I think that there's a need for a conversation that opens up men to talk about how this is difficult for them, and not just how this is difficult for women, and we can share those things together.
My immediate reaction is like, ugh, that's annoying.
We are not in a time where a lot of progressive people, because this is a progressive idea, are interested in hearing the plight of men.
Yeah,
well,
me included.
I think that's why, I'm not going to get political. This is what I would say, but is like, that's why Donald Trump won the election. I just think there's so much male pain. There's so much pain.
But interestingly,
it's not being addressed, and we have this reaction of like male tears, right? That there's something. I can't tell you how many things I've heard in women's spaces that are so dismissive of the trauma that men have. I think that men have been traumatized by our society. I don't think you have. I think you've had this like amazing armor that's been that you have not absorbed any of that, and that's amazing. I think that there are so many men who have, and I think that trauma, if we don't address it, that trauma will be. That pain, if it's not transformed, is transmitted. And that pain is being transmitted to women right now. I think most men are doing the best that they can with what they've been given. And what they've been given is shit. And unless women are ready to talk about that, we're never going to solve our problems.
Well, that's interesting because, again, we talk about, for me, I look at it as it's not about whose turn it is or who's more oppressed or less oppressed.
Yeah.
And, like, I totally get, like, that mindset. But to that point is, if we stop thinking about whose turn is it to feel like we need to be heard or to hear our sad story? But if we are in agreement that maybe some of our social constructs, the way our society as a whole has been raised, and if we all can agree there's parts of it, if not all of it, are broken and they've all played a role. And to that point, if we have this broken society of a patriarchy, that it's going to have negative consequences on obviously women, but to your point, maybe the men too.
Yeah.
So let's not necessarily think about whose turn is it.
No, we're not ranking, right? Our oppressions are not, this is a Gloria Steinem, our oppressions are not ranked, they're linked, right? And
it's affecting it's affecting everyone.
Yeah, if someone is in pain and they're not able to process that pain, that's going to come back and bite you, right? It's like, again, who's treating the bullies? Who's treating the... I think that when we look at the rise of these groups online too, this 4chan and 8chan, and where a lot of the mass shootings are occurring, a lot of these conversations and these men have actually been radicalized online. That's the radicalization, right? We talk about the radicalization of men in the Middle East. What about the radicalization of men in America, right? These are vulnerable. No, isolated men.
It makes sense because that's when you have these movements of progress. This is great. Yeah, that happens. You have people like they stop listening, they hear people, they feel attacked, and then they quietly find their group
and they become and they're looking for community. That's what they're looking for. Everyone wants to be loved. Everyone wants to be heard. And if we as progressives, and I'm, because you mentioned, that this is a progressive idea. If we as progressives say, your pain is not as important based on your gender, we are not fulfilling the mission of gender equality and feminism. We are excluding people's pain based on their gender, which I think is not the society that we want to build.
I hear what you're saying. I guess my reaction is like, okay, we've spent the last however hundreds of years listening to your pain. You've had the microphone. You've had the microphone. You've had the storytelling ability. You've been the directors. You've been the newscasters. It's like, so you've had your time.
But are the stories that we're seeing about male pain, like the stories that I'm seeing on TV and on that are being created is like male superheroes. It's men using violence, men using, the Brad Pitt actually talked about this a couple weeks ago where he said we need more male characters that are redefining masculinity. To see men going through grief, men going through sadness. When's the last time you saw a man really truly connect with another man and be sad in a movie and not, there's all these tropes out there. And I agree with you. Like, we live in a society that is still so unequal towards women. And I am not at all saying that
and minorities.
People of color. Yeah. And obviously this issue of masculinity, I talk a lot about this in the book, is totally intersectional, right? Being a black man in America is very different from being a white man in America. Yeah. Being a gay man in America is very different from being a straight man in America. Yeah. Being a man with a disability, when the ideal of masculinity is to never ask for help. If you need help to get out of bed in the morning, that's going to be really challenging. And in a way, you're embodying this challenge and this transgression of masculinity and how it's not an ideal that even makes sense. And so this is a conversation that goes, it's I understand if we're stuck in the framing of the gender war, right, where it's like women versus men. And it's all women are good, right, in this scenario, and all men are bad, or the people who are good are, fit into one idea. We have to break that framing. That doesn't even make sense. It's actually women plus men plus gender non-binary people and however they're identified versus rape, violence, assault, and suicide and depression. We need to recognize that our livelihoods are just linked, and that if we change what it means to be a woman in our society, we have to change what it means to be a man, or else we're actually going to face the problems that we're facing right now, which is increasing violence, where men feel threatened, men feel like we're trying to take away something from them, and they are believing in this framing of the gender war because even feminism and progressive politics buys into it, saying that feminism is something like we need to just focus on women. No. We need to focus on getting rid of gender norms and stereotypes for everyone. And I go into this in the book. This is my favorite data. Men in feminist countries are actually happier and more healthy than in gender non-equal countries.
It's all really fascinating. It makes a lot of sense to me. And that totally makes sense. And I kind of said this too, like I'm not a big believer in like, it's our turn and our time. I'm a huge advocate of progress, but that's the thing, just the phrasing of well, you've had your time, again, is a threatening phrase. You talk about picking our word choices carefully, thinking for young men out there, 16, 17, 18-year-olds who like, for them, like, what do you mean you had your time? I'm 16. I'm just trying to, fit in. And then ideally, if there's here, this young adult, 18, 19-year-old man wants to be an ally, an advocate. And then at the same time, they're hearing about, no, shut up. You've had your time.
Show up and shut up.
You can't. Right. You don't get to express yourself. That is going to have a negative effect on that person, right or wrong.
Yes,
and that doesn't mean that the woman doesn't have a. You're right. Women haven't been hurt as much, and it's great that we keep doing this. I love that you're saying it's not about. It's about the whole thing. The whole system is in a sense broken. And, when you have men acting negatively towards women, it affects women. And then if there's, it's physics. Every action, there's an equal reaction. Every, whatever, I'm fucking it up. But
and fascinating. I see you and I
know that it's not like 100% correct opinion.
No. Everyone has told me this.
That's my reaction.
Yeah, I get that reaction.
I love
all the
that
time.
because that's what you hear. I mean, those are the conversations that are in for the people listening. I can only imagine the people listening. There's probably a lot of people have been like, we say things, well, wait, what do you mean?
Yes.
It's these concepts we have to keep talking about it because everyone wants to be heard and everyone wants to feel like it's their time. And sometimes it's a heart to share that. Yeah. To share that light. Yeah. Because I totally get it, right? It's like, wait, all of a sudden we've had a little bit of time and all of a sudden now we're focused on men again to try to figure out what we can do better. Yeah. I think it's a constant, never ending journey or challenge that we face as a society to try to not, and I love it, to not get back to where we were. Yeah. It's really quite fascinating. We could probably keep talking about this. It's really great. I love what you're doing. And for other people out there, they can find Liz's book, For the Love of Men. Before we let you go, we're going to play a fun little game called Do You Know Me? It's a game we play with almost all our guests. We like to end things light.
I love lightning rounds.
Get to know you.
Oh dear.
Rochelle and I are going to try to figure out, after spending an hour with you, who knows Liz better.
Wait, what? I'm so excited.
Yeah, we're going to ask you a question. It's fairly random. Don't answer immediately. We're going to ask, we're going to debate and figure it out whether we know, and then you can answer. Okay. Those are generally the rules. Rochelle has selected these questions. Are you ready? I'm sorry. Rochelle says I'm giving her props because I assume they're great. Rochelle hears that and goes, "Well, I hope you like them."
No, I just like her posture. She's like, "Give it to me."
All right. Has Liz ever been grounded 100%?
No, definitely not. She got to where she is because she's a badass who follows the rules but also breaks them in a nice way.
She opened up the show describing a traumatic, somewhat at times, childhood. And I think grounding your kid was a very traditional, normal thing to do. She 100% got grounded. I think I would almost even argue that she was a bit of a troublemaker and got grounded a lot as a kid.
Okay, tell us.
Grounded was a thing I heard on TV, but we don't do in Canada. Like it's not, or maybe
she's Canadian.
Yeah, it wasn't. I didn't grow up in a household that was like very punitive in that way. No,
I got put in the corner.
Oh, in the corner. Oh, I mean, I got told to shut up all the time. Like, but grounded, like you're not a.
You didn't break rules, did you?
I actually I did, but I always got caught, always, and so it actually made me a better adult because now
when you got caught, how was the punishment style?
I was so ashamed when I got caught that it was like, we're not mad, we're disappointed. Like, like I didn't want to disappoint my parents and we were very close. And so I almost self-regulated. Like I knew they didn't need to do more punishment. I was like a little puppy.
Rochelle off to an early 1-0 lead.
Yes.
Has Liz sent someone a selfie in the past week? Yes.
No. You look guilty.
I literally sent someone a selfie this morning, like 2 hours ago.
Was it a girl or a guy?
It was me and a guy, me and my hair artist, Richard. We were sending it to our friend, Liran, who connected us. So, I sent a lot of selfies.
1-1. Yes. She sends a lot. She's not ashamed.
Okay.
Yep. Going against stereotypes. You can send selfie and be a smart, educated, and a progressive.
There you go.
Not
Be a feminist.
not only it's not
I
just
guess
the
it's
dumb
true.
ones sending selfies.
Why are you looking at me?
I feel like that's the stereotype.
It
You
is,
send
it is,
selfies,
it
you're a little
is.
dumb dumb.
Yeah.
I hate that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Selfie away, smart people.
Yes.
Has Liz ever asked someone out on a date by sliding into the DM? slip, and slide.
I feel like, yeah, because she's a
I
big
think she's
Instagrammer.
confident. I think she's confident. She's going against societal norms that she has to wait for a guy to pursue. And if she likes what she wants, bam, she will slide.
And
Yes, I'm a slider.
Oh!
I slide into DMs for professional reasons. That's actually how I got to interview Justin Trudeau. I slid
love that
professionally
about
into
you.
not his DMs, but his campaign manager.
Have you ever slid romantically, though?
I pretty sure, like maybe not straight up like you're hot, but like hey, like would love to meet up for
First of
whatever.
all, I hope you wouldn't say you're hot.
Right, or like I don't make it suggestive. It's usually just like I love usually it's someone that I
Is it
enjoy.
flirty?
And I think I'll be like I love your stuff.
Here's
or,
the trick to
now I'm
sliding
getting-
into someone's DM.
Yeah, go.
oh, here we go.
I think I've mentioned
First.
this. You go on their page. You do a light stalk. And by light stalk, you just kind of scroll the past 20 photos.
Okay.
You find a photo that they look particularly attractive in, right? And then you send them that photo. You just like send them, and then you point something out in the photo that's not them, completely benign to the photo. Like maybe in
This
the
is
photo,
this
science.
is ridiculous.
there's like a tree in the
No,
background.
Nick, no.
And
It
then what do you
works.
say about the tree?
Anything.
You make a joke.
You're just like honest, like let's say it was a.
Tree.
Maybe it's like a pair of shoes they're wearing. Like it's obvious, like
Okay.
it's a bit of a thirst trap photo that they put out,
Okay,
right?
And you notice
And they're
something
expecting
different.
every guy to
You're
look.
hot.
You're hot. Oh my god, you're such a babe.
Yeah.
And you're just like, it's something totally.
Wow.
I love that.
Wow.
It throws people off. If they think you're cute, you will get a response.
Good to know.
No.
Wow, I'm learning so much. That's actually such a. And then what about on Twitter? You can't send photos on Twitter.
Well,
what if you're sliding in DMs on Twitter?
Yeah, well, how do you
It has to be
into Twitter
text-based.
DMs?
You find their Instagram. and slide
Oh,
that way. I'm trying to think here. Like if I were to find a photo. Let's go on Liz's Instagram.
I mean, my Instagram is not. I don't.
You should write a book, How to Pick Up Women on Instagram.
Yeah, clearly. I mean, that's an art.
Let me
That
find
is
it.
the art of
Yes, the art
DM.
of the DM, the art of sliding into DMs.
What do we? I'm gonna try to.
I
trying to
have a
find
few thirst
photo.
traps. I do. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Recently,
single.
I am. Yeah, I am.
I'm trying to find a photo here. What would we? You have a pretty professional Instagram.
Are you
I
doing
do.
it on her right now?
I'm trying to think if I would.
Yeah, what would you do? Let take me through the process.
I'm trying to find something here.
I mean,
This is making for great
It's harder.
podcasting. You scrolling through Instagram.
no one.
Okay, so here's a photo of Liz, and there's a building in the
Oh
background.
wow. Okay. Yeah, there is.
And I don't know. I would pick out the building and I would say something about it.
Okay.
Totally random.
Right. Really
this
like
is-
the building's cheekbones.
um,
I think that's a good move. I actually think that's really smart.
What would you say, Nick?
yeah, I don't know. I would find a better. You have to find the right photo. But yeah, everyone has a photo.
right.
And you just say something completely, like the
Random
photo of her
about-
holding up the book, maybe.
right.
Go back.
That grass looks green.
Yeah.
That's not
That's
her.
Padma. That's not
you?
me.
Okay,
I wish.
But let's say if that was
No.
you.
You'd say,
Yeah. I don't know. It'd be something about landscaping. or
Right.
something. I don't know.
Right,
But
right,
the
right,
point,
right, right.
It doesn't really matter. Is the
yes.
point? Like
You're
the
just
point
striking
is,
a conversation.
you find a bit of a thirst trap
Yeah.
a photo they meant to, like, they think they look hot in.
Yeah.
You reply back, and they expect for you to point out how hot they are, and then you point out like
something different.
the fact that you like Vans over Converse or something.
Okay, I like that.
You know.
I think that's how people should. I was forced to post that by the person who took it. I can't reveal who they are, but I would never post a photo like that. It's
Yeah,
like
that's a good
so
one. I
not
would probably
the type of
pick
thing I do.
that, and I would just be like, really enjoying like your leaning skills or something.
Leaning in,
Leaning in.
truly leaning in. Yeah. super fly.
And I would probably have been like, did you know that you would get better natural lighting if you're actually taking a picture the other way?
Oh, I like that.
Or something like that, or just it's just a conversation starter,
right?
And again,
or slight nagging,
right?
Perhaps
not even it's not a neg. No, I don't believe in negging.
It's not negative, right? It's not like, oh,
it's playful. It's totally
scrunchy.
It's totally it's totally benign. It should have nothing to do with their looks.
Yeah, I like that because it's like disarming. It's almost it's how I prefer. I think a lot of men are nervous about flirting with women, and it's now like harder, and I can have empathy for that. And I think it sucks when we live in a world where like you can't just like strike up a conversation with a stranger and they're like scared about that. And we should make the world safer for everyone. But I think that it's always easier when a guy just comes up to you and says like, I mean, the best pickup line I've ever had was I was at a bar and I was like 19, and this guy came up to me and he was like, did you just fart? Like, or like,
what?
Did someone, like, he was like, someone farted. Like, he just was like, and there's this thing in Quebec where we do it when you smell a fart, and the last person to put their thumb on their.
So you did that?
So he did this, and then I was like, oh, I have to do it too, because it's like I didn't fart. And again, he didn't say it in a way that was like neggy, like you smell bad, but he just it was totally unrelated. So I'm like, hey, I didn't feel like, oh God, this guy wants something out of me, or do I like him? Like the stakes can be really high in certain situations, and it's nice to not make it about that and to just strike up a conversation about something super random.
Yeah.
So I like it.
1-1.
Yeah.
2-1.
Let's just do 2 more.
Has Liz ever hooked up with someone 10 years older than her?
I say yes. She's a journalist. She's around older men a lot in very high stakes situations.
I'm going to say yes. 10 years.
I mean, my ex-boyfriend was 11 years older.
Oh.
So we dated for 2 years. So
there you go.
Yeah, I've done it. Been there.
Has Liz ever been in a relationship with someone they met at a bar?
In a relationship?
Yeah. Did you meet someone at a bar, have a little sex, and then,
Oh, like a one night, after a one night stand?
Well, no, you didn't necessarily hook up the first night, but you met him at a bar. And then you became boyfriend and girlfriend.
Probably, but not like a meaningful relationship. Like there's like boyfriends for like a month or whatever, like people you're seeing, but not like a meaningful partner.
Yeah.
No.
All right, and last question.
Sorry, you haven't even answered.
Okay.
Sorry.
Has Liz ever hooked up with a coworker? Say no.
Her reaction gives it away.
Liz,
yes.
Just wink.
Comment.
We all have. We've all done it. It's never a good idea.
HR will just be pounding on our door.
Oh God.
No pun intended.
Yeah. I mean, that's the kind of thing that used to be far more acceptable.
Well, if you do it the right way, it's still fun.
Still acceptable.
But, just
never a good idea, but
well, yeah. I had a friend tell me, if you can't not do it, do it. Only do it if you cannot not do it.
If you can't not
basically,
do it.
like if you are like, oh, I kind of like this person, like don't do it. If you're like, I can't stop thinking about this person.
If you're slightly
like,
curious, don't do it.
Yeah.
Or if you're like really, really, and you can't stop thinking about them, and even if you try to, then like maybe there's something there.
Well, Liz, we really appreciate it. I've had a lot of fun. Obviously, there's a lot of great information that we've talked about it, and I feel like we can continue to keep talking. But listen, I love this stuff. I love these type of topics. It's why I started this podcast in the first place, to try to just bring up somewhat not necessarily controversial ideas, but like just non-norm ideas. When we are trying to progressive in one area, it's not to say we need to forget about other things. It's just a constant journey that we're on to try to just have open discussions about different things. Sometimes they're challenging. It's a lot of fun, and I think it's doing a lot of great things. So for the people out there, find Liz's book, For the Love of Men. Where can they find it? I'm assuming
everywhere.
Amazon.
Yeah, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, online. You can buy it at bookstores.
Audible.
But yeah, it's like buying it online is just easier, because sometimes bookstores, first-time author, it's hard. So
where can people find you on social?
I'm Feminist Tabulous everywhere. I'm Liz Plank on TikTok. We could do a TikTok. Do you want to do a TikTok? No. Okay.
That's a hard no.
It's always
I don't even know what it is.
There's no. You don't know what a TikTok is? Okay.
I'm somewhat familiar, but I don't know exactly.
All right.
I feel like it's a boomerang.
It's a dancing app. It's fun. There's music. It's cute. But Feminist Tabulous, or just if you type in Liz Plank, I'll show up.
Well, thank you so much. I really
Thank
appreciate it. It's been a lot of
you.
fun.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening, guys. As always, don't forget to rate us 5 stars on iTunes. Sending your questions to asknick@castmedia.com for our Ask Nick episodes. We really appreciate it. As always, thanks for listening. We will see you next time. Have a great day.